My name is Flavin, and I'm a railway modeller, and I have a layout called Edge Hey Strines Railway. This video is about how I made a realistic looking lake to sit on my layout.
This is the layout, the Edge Hey Strines Railway, and the lake that I'm going to be talking to you about is in the forefront of these pictures. Today I'm going to be showing you a how I did it video, and that video is about how I made a lake, a sort of marshy lake that can be used by people on my layout, and I hope you're going to find it interesting. I really like modelling water, so I decided that I would make a lake with a runoff section of white water so that it matched up with some of the other scenery that I was planning to do. A particular challenge was that this lake was going to be on a lift-up section that allows me into the middle of my layout. We start off by using photographs that are similar to what I want to create. Started to add height to bits where the island was going to be with filler, and I now started to paint it. And I painted it quite bright blues, but I also had some other grungy looking paints on my palette. And I realised that I was being a bit too bright and blue, and I added a lot more greens. So this is where I started to add the greeny tones and to try and get the realism that the lake needed with my paint palette. I then added grass, created the island, and added a whole load of gravel around the edge. I'm ready to put the water onto the lake. Now, I don't pour water anymore, I use structure gel. Now this one is the actual structure gel. I also use a different one which is called the heavy structure gel, and that one gives a much more lively surface, as if there's waves and so on. While I'm at it, I'm going to be putting reeds. I've got some wider, taller ones, some taller, thinner ones in place. I'm also going to be putting a bit of gravel, and I've also got my tools ready. I tend to use spatulas. I use Galleria, heavy structure gel and structure gel and a brush. So I'm just going to put some onto my brush. It still looks pretty thick and clunky, but I can paint a surface with it. So what I'm going to do is paint the surface all the way around the edge, right up to where I've already put the gravel. Now you can see I've built up a reasonable layer all the way round. This will dry relatively quickly because it's not got a very thick layer of it. And once it's dry, I'll show you what I do next. But as I'm using the brush at the moment to give a sort of runoff as the water flows round the island and off to where the river goes off. That way you get the realism to start with. And I may not need to do much more than use my paintbrush. So I'm now at the point where I'm going to leave this to dry. Once it's dry, you'll see that it has a proper shiny surface, and that shiny surface is basically going to be the lake. And after that I will just add a few finishing touches, and I'll show you how I do those. On one corner of the lift up section there is a piece that I have to be able to move, and I'm going to show you a little waterfall that I created on that using heavy structure gel. I use a paintbrush. I did try it with a palette, but there really wasn't room, so a fairly good lump of structure gel on the brush, and I paint it into place. This is where it runs off actually into the lake, and I would normally place the piece that you saw earlier in that corner. So this is how I use the heavy structure gel to give the feeling of movement on the waterfall. Once that's in place, I leave it to dry. That doesn't take terribly long, but this is when it's all put together. You can see a bit of a join, I can't do much about that, but I use white paint to highlight the movement. This looks like I've been painting white on the surface of the lake. Actually, I haven't. What I've been doing is using the structure gel again, putting it onto a paintbrush and painting it onto the surface. The idea is that you'll get a feeling of movement without me having to actually paint it. And I probably won't paint it because once it's dry, there'll just be a slight ridge as it goes round the island and comes off that waterfall and that waterfall. So it's to give it movement. At this stage, the water has now dried, the heavy structure gel water that is, and what you can see is the surface movement that my painting it on thickly with that brush has created. I've taken the camera down to the level of the lake and you can see the water, you can see some of the stones and some of the rocks, and needs to be lifted up in order to allow the bridge to lift. I like to create as much realism as I can on my layouts. So there is a bridge there. Where the little waterfall comes off, there is a man sitting in his tent. There's even a little bit of splash at the bottom of the waterfall. As we pan round, you'll see that there are swans and there are ducks. I like to work very hard on creating the right ambience. So there are rocks, stones, little bits of cliff, grass, trees. There are even some reeds here. That's this second waterfall that helps to create the movement round the lake and round the island. There are people sitting on the edge. There are some cyclists. Those are wild swimmers or wild water swimmers. There's a couple of herons on the island. And as we pan round further, you'll see that there are some little boys sitting on a pontoon fishing. If you've enjoyed this video, please like it, share it, comment on it, or go to my YouTube channel where I have a lot more videos for you to watch. And I will speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.